Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L, and now let's talk some Death March. Episode... I don't know what episode it was. It was episode 7. Great. Alright, cool. Had it there on the video screen. Yeah, anyway, episode 7, Death March. Okay, so guys, last time on the Death March videos, I said I was going to try and read all the spots that we were doing in the episodes. I found out something very crucial though. The web novel is drastically different than the light novel. Well, specifically the order of events in the web novel and some of the scenarios surrounding it are different, and so that became pretty much a lost cause because there's no point comparing the two when the two are out of sequence with each other. One of those things. But I did the next best thing since I can't get the light novels right now. I looked at the manga adaptation, and from there are a few things in between the adaptation of the manga and the episode itself that things were missing. Very quickly, I'll just go through with them. We missed just some talk that Sato has in regards to magic. That spot would have been right where Arisa was explaining the water vapor, how water boils and all that. Sato would have had a spot explaining that he would try and learn magic that had to do something with that process. Then we also missed on world building regarding Arisa's country, specifically when she was talking or showing the girls or playing around with those cards to teach the girls different words when we were having that whole little gag with the girls only knowing meat. There would have been extra context saying that in Arisa's country she did not have to learn words because her country felt she as a princess didn't have, like, as long as there was someone to support her, she didn't have to read or write. So it was a very, it was very, I think she called it chauvinistic country. It was very male oriented. The girls would just be treated like princesses, and that's pretty much what Arisa was saying was happening. Overall, she was in with the goal to learn words the same way the two little girls were going to be doing. But when you look at the context, this might all be things. There are things that don't matter if this thing is not getting, let's say, 3 seasons. Because the magic thing really only comes into play when Sato's more established and can do more with magic resources. We also got a name drop in this episode, which for longtime fans, I'm sure it's going to get you excited when Mia's talking about a certain someone who told her what's so bad about lightning strikes. Anyway, that was good. Things like that give you hope, but anyway. Those are the very quick things that were missed in the episode. Now we can just start talking about Death March episode 7. So yeah, overall, a slice of life episode. We only get the real hardcore or not called hardcore action. We get the setup for the hardcore action at the very end to say like, okay, we're gonna have a problem. But otherwise, this was a pretty just cute episode. It focused a lot on the slice of life aspects, and it focused a lot on the little girls, just kind of enjoying their life. And we also had the answer to the little slave kids that showed up in, I think, episode 4. It showed up here. In that episode, or whenever those little slave kids showed up, the commenters pointed out that there was going to be a segment later on with them. So here they are again. Whether or not this is the final segment with them, my memories aren't too clear, but they showed up again. And again, this episode did make for a lot of cutesy moments in between Pochi, Tama, Arisa. Like, the cuteness quota was reached. And then we also have the introduction of Mia. We know Mia's going to be with them for a while. In this segment, we got introduced to the idea of escorting Mia back to her home. We find out her circumstances. So overall, pretty cool stuff, pretty cute stuff. Really can't add any more to the cuteness. I mean, there's a limit to how much you can analyze cuteness. Okay. That being said, are there any spots that we can give extra note to just to appreciate it? Well, yeah, there's a few bits. Like always, it's going to be Sato and his interactions with the girls, specifically the little ones, because it just shows how for them he is, how into their development he is, how he wants them to do better. Pretty much all that. Like, we've already covered those points whenever they pop up in the previous episodes, and this just kind of continues it. There's nothing going against that. There is another point that I think it's really interesting, and that's specifically when it comes to education. We saw that he received the education skill this time around, and one note here is that we see a glimpse of the weakness of the skill system. Specifically that just because he has the skill of education doesn't mean he's good at it. And we really see that when it comes into the water vapor segment. Sato is able to tell them like, hey, this is what water vapor is, and he's able to tell them in the most scientific terms. But Arisa points out that's not good enough for little girls, and she's able to simplify it to a point that the girls can understand it too. That's a very big distinction, and it does just show, like, to some degree, the weakness of the skill acquisition system. It's not nuanced enough. It doesn't lend itself to nuanced applications. Like, for instance, this required the extra context of dumbing things down for kids. It doesn't matter if you can educate if the person can't understand, but for the context of the skill system, it's good enough. It's the bare minimum. So I like that distinction, and it just reminds you that Sato is not all powerful. Other point to go and talk about was the whole little bit with the cart driving and buying the cart. That might not have been super clear. What Sato ultimately did in that whole little sequence, and he was talking to Natty about the cart, was that, well, what he did was he looked at the carts outside, he did a quick item appraisal, he found out the cost, and then he made the sack with that much money in it, or whatever extra he put in there for Natty, and that's how he did it. That was just pretty much quick item appraisal and then putting it together and making it seem like he's a hardcore merchant. Of course, he noted that it was a bit too good because Natty-san was just generally confused that he was so good at that. Overall, that segment was cool. We also got more into Lulu, which was nice. We got to find out what she really cares about. She came out of her shell a little bit more, and also Lulu now has her medicine for her pains. Overall, good stuff on the Lulu front, good stuff on the little girl front, good stuff on Arisa overall. The only character of the group that I think really got shafted in all this was Liza, and even then Liza had her little comedy moment of, this isn't poultry, this is chicken. So that was all cool. Let's see, any other points to talk about? Well, I guess the spirits, we got to find out a little bit about the spirits and how they work. Not a really big deal right now since we can't really apply them to anything, but we did see Sato sparkle when Mia looked at him. I thought that was a very nice touch, and it adds a little bit of a mystery to something surrounding Mia. We also got more circumstances out of her, and they were coming from Mise, and this is pretty much the setup for, I guess, the big conflict of this next arc. It's going to just be dealing with wherever or whoever is pursuing Mia, whoever put Mia in the cradle in the first place. So cool stuff overall. I'm pretty excited into it. There was more that was elaborated on before the beast or before the monster actually showed up at the end in the manga, but I'm pretty sure that stuff is going to be tossed at the beginning of the next episode, so we're going to get the exposition there. And yeah, overall that's going to be a pretty good time. I think it's going to be fun for people who are watching this. Let's see, anything else? Well, I guess the last little bit like that's really worth talking about, aside from the plot stuff with Mia, is how our little slave girls interact with other slave kids. And that was a pretty interesting little sequence. They come up into the kids, they tell them to stop bullying Sato, or to not bully Sato, and it just kind of like shows you, well, when it comes to the slave kids, they don't really care all too much for each other. Or at least when it comes to Pochi and Tama versus these kids, they're very protective of Sato, and it's interesting to see that they come into that situation with conflict rather than the cooperative nature that Sato has. And I found it very interesting. It just kind of paint a picture of how society works even among the slave kids, and it would be very interesting, and I don't recall if this is memories that are coming from me from the web novel, but it's very interesting if there's a difference in treatment between what Pochi and Tama are and what those kids are, because they're very clearly a different class of subhuman than those two. So if there's even like divisions between the slaves themselves, this is a really bad system. This is a really sad system, and ultimately you could also like call this just little kids being little kids. Like Pochi and Tama are just being protective of Sato because they feel that's their thing. But if this is a learned behavior from other people, that this class of slave is lesser, that's a bigger problem, and it's a bigger implication for just the state of the world. And it also is just goes to show that kids just pick up on things regardless of whether or not it's good or bad. Anyway, I like that sequence overall. It's the cutest sequence there because the kids came there with all the nice intention. Sato told the girls that no, nothing bad's going on, and then they got to leave with jerky, and the little girls got to get along. So overall, like, it felt nice, but little moments like that just make it kind of sad about how bad things are when it comes to the treatment of slaves in this world. Anywho, yeah, you know, I'm not gonna walk you through the whole step-by-step process of the owl that was following people around. All I'm gonna say really is that it was super creepy. If an owl ever showed up in my room that I had seen 3 times earlier that day, I'd be pretty freaked out. So creepy stuff overall, but you know, we got the little thing, we got the blurb right before it. Mia was kidnapped. The rat people saved her, and now we're back into the situation. The guy that put her in the cradle probably wants to take her back. So yeah, guys, let's call it there. It's a pretty simple video, but I'm kind of having to do this really quickly, but I hope you enjoyed it overall. Simple stuff, slice of life, but yeah, I enjoyed it. So let's end it there. Till next time, I hope you have a great day.